I'm going to say something the pharmaceutical industry never wants you to hear. That pill you've taken for years, it's not protecting your heart after 65. Companies know it. But today, I'm exposing the hidden truth they keep buried. Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara taught us that medicine should protect vitality, not quietly erode it over time. And he warned us what happens when we forget that principle. Treating numbers while ignoring the whole person is like polishing a mirror while the room grows darker. That line matters because subtle heart damage does not arrive with sirens or headlines. It shows up first as fatigue, breathlessness, swelling, or reduced stamina, not dramatic events. You don't collapse, you slow down. You stop doing the things that once felt easy, and most people are told that's just aging. Dr. Andrew Weil reminds us of something equally important: balance matters. When the body's internal rhythms are disrupted daily, stress accumulates silently. Not all at once, not loudly, but persistently. This is not about fear, this is not about panic, and this is absolutely not about stopping medications on your own. This is about recognizing patterns and asking the right questions, questions that protect your heart, your energy, and your independence. Today, we are going to walk through 4 insights together. Each one builds on the last. And we will end with something very practical: what to review before your next refill or annual visit. Stay with me. There is a belief that quietly protects the wrong thing. If a drug caused harm, it would show up immediately. That assumption feels logical. It feels safe. And it is one of the most common reasons subtle cardiac strain goes unnoticed for years. What actually changes after 60 is not the medication itself, but the body that receives it. With age, liver metabolism slows and kidney clearance declines, increasing drug exposure to heart tissue even at the same dose. The prescription label stays the same. The number on the bottle stays the same. But what reaches the heart is no longer the same. Think of it this way: a daily dose becomes a slow drip instead of a sip, small but constant, not overwhelming, not dramatic, just enough to apply pressure every single day. This is why the early signals are so easy to dismiss. No chest pain, just declining stamina and longer recovery after simple tasks. That sentence alone describes thousands of older adults I have met over the years, people who still look stable on paper but feel subtly diminished in their bodies. The heart is working harder, longer, under conditions it was never meant to tolerate indefinitely. In this stage, the most important shift is awareness. Review all daily medications annually after age 65. Ask if dosing was set when you were younger and heavier. Those 2 points alone have changed outcomes more times than I can count, not because the medication was wrong, but because time had quietly changed the equation, and most people were never told to look back. There is another quiet assumption that shapes how people interpret what their heart is telling them. Heart-related side effects are often imagined as sudden events: a racing pulse, sharp pain, a moment so dramatic it cannot be ignored. That expectation is deeply misleading, especially later in life. The aging heart rarely announces stress with urgency. Instead, it adapts, compensates, and absorbs pressure until effort becomes the new normal. Certain daily medications, especially those considered routine or well-tolerated, can influence electrolyte balance, blood pressure regulation, or heart rhythm. None of these changes need to be extreme to matter. Even slight shifts, repeated day after day, increase cardiac workload over time. The heart responds the only way it knows how: by working harder. At first, this compensation feels invisible. Circulation remains adequate. Blood pressure readings appear acceptable. There is no immediate signal of danger, but internally the system is expending more energy to achieve the same result. That extra effort is rarely acknowledged, because standard measurements are designed to capture extremes, not strain. This is why the analogy matters. The heart becomes an engine running slightly out of tune. It still runs. It still gets you where you need to go. But it burns more fuel, generates more heat, and wears down faster. Nothing looks broken, yet efficiency quietly erodes. Many older adults hear the same reassuring phrase year after year: everything looks controlled. Numbers fall within target ranges. Charts remain stable. And yet daily life begins to feel heavier. Tasks that once required little thought now demand planning. Inclines feel steeper. Recovery takes longer. Blood pressure looks controlled, but walking uphill becomes harder each year. That sentence captures the disconnect perfectly. Control on paper does not always equal ease in the body. The heart may be maintaining output, but at a growing physiological cost. Electrolyte shifts offer one example. Even small imbalances can alter how heart muscle cells contract and relax. Rhythm may remain technically normal, yet less efficient. Blood pressure regulation provides another. Some medications flatten natural variability, forcing the heart to operate within a narrower range, reducing its ability to respond smoothly to physical or emotional demands. Over time, these constraints add up. The heart is not failing, but it is no longer flexible. And flexibility is one of the most important qualities an aging heart can retain. What makes this process so difficult to recognize is its gradual nature. There is no clear starting point, no moment when someone can say, "This is when things changed." Instead, there is a slow recalibration of expectations. People begin to avoid stares. They pause more often. They assume reduced stamina is an unavoidable consequence of age. In reality, the heart is signaling load, not age. This stage is also where subtle signs begin to cluster. Resting heart rate trends upward over months or years. Mild swelling appears by evening. Occasional dizziness emerges when standing. Breathing feels slightly restricted during exertion. None of these symptoms seem serious in isolation. Together, they tell a coherent story. A heart under continuous, low-grade stress adapts by prioritizing survival over efficiency. That trade-off preserves function in the short term, but limits resilience in the long term. The heart becomes dependable but less forgiving. What often goes unspoken is that these changes are not personal failures. They are physiological responses to an environment that has shifted. Aging alters how the body handles chemical inputs. A dose that once passed through smoothly may now linger longer, interact differently, or exert more influence on sensitive tissues. The result is not catastrophe. It is friction. And friction, when applied daily, reshapes systems. This is why so many older adults feel dismissed when they describe their experiences. Tests return within range. Symptoms lack drama. The conversation ends prematurely, yet the body continues to communicate in quieter ways. Understanding this pattern restores context. It explains why stability on paper can coexist with decline in lived experience. It reframes fatigue, breathlessness, and reduced stamina not as inevitable losses, but as signals worthy of attention. The aging heart is not fragile, it is adaptive. But adaptation has limits. Recognizing how common medications can subtly increase workload over time allows those limits to be respected rather than crossed. When strain is understood early, it can often be moderated. When it is ignored, it becomes normalized. And normalization is where preventable loss of energy and independence most often begins. The heart does not need drama to be under pressure. It only needs time. There is a widespread belief that if a medication has been tolerated for years, the body will continue to tolerate it indefinitely. That belief rests on the idea that tolerance is static, that once the heart adapts, it remains unchanged. Biology does not work that way. After 60, the heart is not weaker, but it is different. Structure, signaling, and recovery all shift in subtle but meaningful ways. These changes do not announce themselves as disease. They present as reduced adaptability. Heart muscle gradually stiffens with age. This stiffness is not dramatic enough to show up as failure, but it alters how efficiently the heart fills and empties with each beat. At the same time, baroreceptors, the pressure sensors that help regulate blood pressure from moment to moment, become less responsive. Autonomic regulation weakens as well, reducing the smooth coordination between heart rate, blood vessel tone, and breathing. Together, these changes reduce the heart's ability to adjust quickly to chemical stresses. The analogy that best captures this shift is a familiar one. The aging heart is like a seasoned athlete, skilled, experienced, and resilient, but slower to recover from strain. It can still perform, it can still respond, but it no longer rebounds instantly from repeated challenges. When a daily medication introduces even mild physiological pressure, the younger heart absorbs it with ease. The older heart absorbs it too, but recovery takes longer. That difference accumulates. This is why a dose once tolerated can begin to feel heavier. Not abruptly, not dramatically, but gradually. A dose once tolerated now causes fatigue or lightheadedness. That experience is often confusing. Nothing obvious has changed. The medication is the same. The diagnosis is the same. Yet the body's response is no longer identical. The heart is signaling that its margin for adjustment has narrowed. Chemical stressors do not act in isolation. They interact with hydration status, electrolyte balance, sleep quality, and emotional stress. In younger physiology, these variables are buffered more efficiently. In older physiology, buffering capacity declines. Small disturbances linger longer. Autonomic regulation plays a critical role here. This system governs heart rate variability, blood pressure shifts, and the transition between rest and activity. As it weakens with age, the heart loses some of its fine-tuning. Responses become less precise. Peaks and valleys flatten. The result is not instability, but rigidity. Rigidity feels like effort. It feels like needing more time to stand up, more time to catch one's breath, more time to feel normal again after exertion. These sensations are often attributed to aging itself, when in reality they reflect reduced physiological flexibility. Kidney and electrolyte dynamics further complicate the picture. Aging kidneys manage sodium, potassium, and fluid more conservatively. Minor medication-related shifts can therefore have outsized effects on cardiac rhythm and muscle contraction. The heart responds by prioritizing consistency over efficiency. Consistency preserves life. Efficiency preserves vitality. This distinction matters. A heart can remain stable while vitality slowly diminishes, and because stability is measurable, it receives attention. Vitality is subjective, so it is often overlooked. The heart's vulnerability after 60 is not a flaw. It is a predictable outcome of long-term adaptation. The system has spent decades responding to demands. Over time, responsiveness gives way to conservation. What often goes missing in conversations about medications is this temporal context. Drugs are evaluated based on short-term tolerance and population averages. Aging hearts operate on longer timelines and individual thresholds. This is why subtle symptoms deserve respect. Fatigue, lightheadedness, reduced stamina, and slower recovery are not vague complaints. They are expressions of altered physiology. They are the language of a heart that is still functioning, but doing so with less reserve. Age-adjusted dosing and periodic electrolyte and kidney function checks exist precisely because tolerance changes over time. They reflect an understanding that physiology evolves, even when diagnoses do not. When this evolution is acknowledged, older hearts are no longer misunderstood. They are seen accurately, capable, adaptive, and deserving of care that evolves with them. The heart does not become fragile with age. It becomes selective about what it can absorb. At this point, many people reach a quiet crossroads in their thinking. When a daily medication is suspected of contributing to fatigue, breathlessness, or reduced stamina, the situation can feel binary. Either everything continues unchanged, or the drug is abandoned altogether. That framing creates unnecessary tension, and it obscures what actually happens in thoughtful medical care. The reality is more measured. Most cardiac side effects linked to long-term medication use are not absolute. They are often dose-related, timing-related, or interaction-related. The medication itself is rarely the villain. More often, the context in which it is taken has shifted. This distinction matters because it changes the entire conversation. Rather than viewing treatment as something that must be endured or rejected, it becomes something that can be adjusted, refined, aligned more closely with the body's current physiology. The image that best captures this approach is a familiar one. This is fine-tuning the instrument, not throwing it away. A well-played instrument does not sound its best forever without adjustment. Strings loosen, temperature changes affect tone, subtle corrections restore clarity. The same principle applies here. The goal is not silence, the goal is harmony. When this perspective is adopted, outcomes often shift in quiet but meaningful ways. After small adjustments, energy and breathing improved without sacrificing treatment goals. That experience is not rare. It reflects a process in which treatment evolves alongside the person receiving it. Timing is reconsidered. Dosage is re-evaluated. Interactions between multiple prescriptions are examined with fresh eyes. The heart responds by reclaiming some of its efficiency. Abrupt discontinuation is not part of this process. Sudden changes introduce their own risks, particularly for the cardiovascular system. Stability matters. continuity matters. What changes is not the commitment to care, but the precision of it. In well-managed situations, conversations often include whether the current dose still matches the body's needs, whether the timing of administration aligns with circadian rhythms, and whether combinations of drugs are amplifying effects unintentionally. These are not dramatic interventions. They are refinements. Equally important is the recognition that medications do not exist in isolation. Nutrition, hydration, sleep, movement, and stress all influence how the heart responds to chemical inputs. When these factors support the system, reliance on higher doses often becomes unnecessary. When they do not, even modest doses can feel burdensome. Reassessment is part of this landscape, not constant monitoring but thoughtful follow-up. Changes in energy, breathing, and stamina tend to reveal themselves over weeks rather than days. When improvements appear, they are usually gradual, restoring confidence rather than startling the system. What stands out in these situations is not the drama of change, but the relief of alignment. The heart no longer feels as though it is pushing against invisible resistance. Effort begins to match output again. Daily life feels more proportionate. This approach also preserves trust. Trust in medicine, trust in the body, trust in the idea that care does not have to be static to be effective. When treatment adapts, it signals respect for the individual rather than blind allegiance to a chart. The most counterintuitive part of this process is its calmness. There is no emergency posture, no urgent reversal, just a recognition that long-term success depends on periodic recalibration. Older hearts respond well to this respect. They are not asking for less care. They are asking for care that fits. When medications are allowed to evolve alongside aging physiology, the heart regains space. Space to recover, space to respond, space to function without constant strain. That space is where energy returns. It is where breathing feels easier. It is where independence quietly strengthens again. And it begins not with stopping, but with understanding. What this ultimately comes down to is not fear, but timing. The body at 70 does not respond the same way it did at 50, even when the prescription label never changes. Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara reminded us that good medicine evolves as the person evolves, and that longevity is protected when treatment follows the individual, not the chart. Dr. Andrew Weil's principle fits here as well. Health depends on balance, and when daily inputs quietly overwhelm the system, small harm accumulates. Protecting the heart preserves energy, mobility, and independence. Awareness allows subtle strain to be recognized and managed. A daily drug should support the heart, not quietly burden it.